What's up, people? This is Midnight Strike 3625, back again to review another album for you guys. So tonight we're going to delve right back into the ACDC discography to review their 1986 effort entitled Who Made Who. Zoom up a little bit here, or hold it up to show you what the cover looks like, and the title here, Who Made Who, and this is the only cover where ACDC has a blue and yellow color scheme, and it actually stands out in their discography quite significantly cover-wise and art-wise. So, from an artistic direction, this is a very epic cover. Now, this is their first soundtrack album, first out of two, and the only soundtrack album to contain new material. Now, don't get too carried away over excitement. This only has 3 new songs, only one of which, the title track, Who Made Who, contains any sort of lyricism, aka vocals, aka actual singing by Brian Johnson. Only one. So I'm thinking that this is where Brian Johnson's voice critically just took a shot, took a turn for the worse, a drastic turn for the worse, because you can really feel it on this album in particular, on this song in particular, Who Made Who, because before I get too in greater detail, before I get too in-depth with this review, I'm going to say that the song Who Made Who didn't exactly impress me very much from a vocal standpoint. Now, from a simplicity standpoint, from an instrumental standpoint, it's one of the best songs they've ever written. It's one of the easiest songs to play on rhythm guitar, as well as lead guitar and drums and everything pretty much. It's one of the more simplistic songs they have in their catalog. But however, the way that they combine everything, they combine it in such a way that it's so simple, yet it's fresh, and it's energizing, and it's really just fun to listen to. It's a really fun song, even with Brian Johnson's really raspy vocals that I just can't really get into for some reason. I really like this song. It's a really catchy song. It really just gets stuck in your head easy, and it's one of those songs that just stays with you. So it's a very memorable and simplistic song, but the vocals really kind of took a turn for the worse on this album, in which Brian Johnson's voice is shot in 1986. So, basically, on the rest of the album, you have 2 instrumentals, DT and Chase the Ace. DT, I wasn't too big of a fan of, but Chase the Ace is actually a pretty awesome kind of energetic chase thing, or chase instrumental. But this is the, before we get too carried away, this is the soundtrack for, if you can see it here, Maximum Overdrive, the 1986 Stephen King special. And I tried watching the video. I couldn't make it past the 40-minute mark because I felt like I was watching the same thing that I already knew about from the previews. I watched 40 minutes of it, and I still had no clue what the fuck was going on. So I'm done with it. I am not even gonna try to watch this. I'm not even gonna try and finish it, because ACDC, even in their interviews, Angus Young is quoted as saying this movie is god bloody awful. So it's a bloody awful movie. Why do we do this? You know, that at least they made Who Made Who, but we're not gonna talk about the movie that much, because really, we're gonna focus on the music. The track-by-track music. The awesome, epic soundtrack that is Who Made Who. So basically there are a few other new things on here that I have to really, bring to the light and kind of bring up, such as the remix of Shake Your Foundations, which really wasn't found on anything except for the single release of one of the singles off Fly on the Wall, I believe. Not exactly sure which one, but it is on this album, or at least this version of the album. I hear that some versions of Who Made Who come with the original version of Shake Your Foundations off Fly on the Wall. The only real difference is the production is different on the vocals. There's less echoing, there's less distortion, and there is no drumming in the beginning, which I actually kind of miss the drumming. I actually kind of like the original a little bit better, because especially in the chorus, the production seems to fall flat on the remix. So, I mean, maybe it's just me. I didn't really notice it much as a kid, and when I was 14 years old, but I really, listening to it again, I really just kind of noticed it and didn't really like it that much. I mean, it's listenable, but I don't know, once you listen to the original, it's just, you can't go back, really. So, basically, as a track-by-track, it goes Who Made Who, and then into their hit You Shook Me All Night Long from Back in Black, and of course, the vocal discrepancy there is a big one. One thing that I said about 74 Jailbreak, the album that preceded Fly on the Wall, or at least the EP that preceded Fly on the Wall, per se, is that I really just, it was a good album, but it lacked the consistency of prior ACDC albums, or future ACDC albums in this case. It lacked flow. It really didn't have any sort of consistency or contingency where the songs kind of just flow seamlessly into one another, or where they just sound like they should be there. But it's kind of the same with this album. I mean, Who Made Who definitely does kind of flow into You Shook Me All Night Long, but after You Shook Me All Night Long, I feel like I should be listening to Have a Drink on Me or something. I mean, it really doesn't have that consistent basis of flow for an album that it should. And that's one of the key things that is missing. And of course, I know it's a compilation album. It's not an actual official AC/DC album, studio release, but they marketed it as one, and they remastered it as such. So it counts because it has new material in it. The thing about DT, the next song, is it's very repetitive. It's very mid-tempo, and it kind of repeats the same thing over and over again until the end, where they repeat the same thing but quieter. So there's a little bit of variation in the structure as well. So it has the quiet part and it has the really, really loud part. But most of these instrumentals could have been put together or kind of bridged together with some lyrics, with some vocals. They could have added some of that stuff in, especially with Chase the Ace. I mean, Chase the Ace would have been an epic intro, or really good for the verse structure of some of the songs that they could have made, because, you know, they actually had a lot of instrumentals that they didn't put on this album that are actually evident from the movie Maximum Overdrive. That's like one of the only reasons why I watched it, is because I felt like I had to watch it, or at least part of it, to get the feel for what this album was trying to portray. So, didn't really do much for me. I mean, I watched like 40 minutes, as I said before. It's just cheap people getting their hands cut off with saws or knives, whatever, carving knives, and people getting electrocuted and gas squirting in people's eyes. That's pretty much what I got. That's the gist of what happened, and they're just kind of stuck in a diner. So it's the 80s, and it's a corrupt diner. I don't fucking know what's going on with this movie. It's kind of a bad movie, but this is actually a pretty gritty soundtrack to it, and it actually sounds better in the movie. That's the thing. Brian Johnson's vocals on Who Made Who, the first track, sound better in the movie than they do on this remix or on this version of it. So I don't know what the deal with that is. I mean, maybe the mix just kind of made it sound flat. Maybe it flattened it out with the production on Who Made Who, the Epic Remaster version, as opposed to the originals, or at least the 1994 ACło versions. So I'm not exactly sure why it sounds the way it does, but usually they use the original in the music video, and it kind of sounds the same. So I'm not sure if it's the production of the movie itself that makes Brian Johnson's voice sound a little bit more natural, so I'm not entirely sure. The next song, Sink the Pink, of course, is an interesting song, as I said in my last review. It is on Fly on the Wall, and I don't know, it flows nicely from DT, and that's partially because of the garage-sounding production from DT to Sink the Pink, which is, of course, like I said, on Fly on the Wall, and has more of a garage-esque kind of demo production to it, or quality to it, but I don't know, it just doesn't really have the flow into the next song, Ride On, which is one of my favorite songs off Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. So it's one of those instances where you go from a Brian Johnson song over here that is more, you know, hard rock, in your face, balls to the wall, really almost metal, you know, guitar sounding, to Ride On, which is a slower, softer song. You're just like, what happened? The transition is so jarring, you just don't know what happened. So, or you just don't know how you got from there, I should say. The next song, Hell's Bells, like I said, you know, it's off of Back in Black, and I feel like I should be listening to Shoot to Thrill next, but then there's Chase the Ace, and of course, For Those About to Rock, We Salute You. One of my very, very favorite AC/DC songs of all time closes this album. It's 9 tracks long. It should have been longer, in my opinion. They should have actually utilized what they had, the material that they had, to make a full-blown album, instead of using old songs and just kind of piecing them together, much like they did with 74 Jailbreak. And that's kind of the consistency of this album. None. There is none. So that's really my only complaint about it, is the album itself just seems like it's just pieced together. I mean, even if you're writing a soundtrack album, write a new album consisting completely of new material. that's really the only thing that I have to say for that one. So basically, overall, Brian Johnson at this point, Angus Young, and just the band in general are in a tight spot. I don't really think that Simon Wright was the right fit for this band, and that will definitely show on Blow Up Your Video, the next album. After which they would fire, or Simon Wright would actually go on to join Dio for his Lock Up the Wolves album. They wouldn't fire him, but he went on to join Dio. So he was out of the band. They were bringing Chris Slade after that, and he seemed like a better fit. Simon Wright, though, not one of my favorite drummers. Didn't really like him in ACDC. Liked him in Dio, but not in ACDC. He just wasn't the right fit. They didn't really seem to have any chemistry at this point. It's just the albums themselves kind of feature musicianship that seem like they're on opposite ends of the spectrum. They're not really working together. They're just kind of doing their own thing. And that's very prevalent on this release with the instrumentals. That's very prevalent with the next release, which contains all the filler in the world. But overall, I don't think I'm going to rate this album because it is a soundtrack album. And I don't really think it would be fair to rate this album, because if I did, I would have to take into account the flow, the consistency, the vocals, and I would have to take into account that a lot of what's on this album, it would be unfair to rate, because it's all songs that we've heard before, with the exception of 3 of them, and I don't really think it's fair to pit that up against other things, like other albums of completely new material. So, with that, it is a good album, but if you're starting out with it, you know, like I said, with Fly on the Wall, it's kind of mediocre. So, with the exception of Who Made Who, I think this album is kind of a pass. I mean, Who Made Who itself is an awesome song. It's a very, very, very decent song, especially with the musicianship and the instrumentals, or to go along with it. But the instrumentation in Who Made Who itself really kind of makes the song for me. The vocals, on the other hand, no. So basically, that is my review of Who Made Who, the soundtrack album right here. And, as always, this is Midnight Strike 3625. Keep calm and rock on.